Attention, nation of Nindie. You have the right to remain independent. Anything you play can and will be charged to your eShop account. If you cannot afford a list of new release Nindies, one will be provided for you. Thanks for tuning in to the Nindie Nation podcast, your one-stop weekly shop of everything independently developed for the Nintendo Switch. I'm Jeff, and today we'll discuss all of the new Nindies releasing on the eShop from August 30th through September 5th. Afterwards, we'll take a look at the hundreds of games currently on sale in the eShop and trim it down to just a few that are worth your digital dollar. If you're the more visual learner, please subscribe to the Nindie Nation channel on YouTube, where you can find this podcast in video format, complete with footage of the games discussed on today's episode. But there's even more good stuff on the Nindie Nation YouTube channel, including a brand new Let's Play Nindies of Double Fine's Rad, all past podcast episodes, and we're adding new content every week. If you like what you see, like what you hear, or just want to gush about your favorite Nindies, hit us up on Twitter at Nindie Nation. The Nindie Nation podcast is brought to you by the Nintendo Village, a group of content creators focused on everything inside the house that Mario built. You can find them at thenintendovillage.com, where there is a smorgasbord of Nintendo goodness, from feature articles, reviews across the Nintendo spectrum, and more weekly shows like P-Myth Gaming and Nintendo Nostalgia. Those boys over at Mouse Bites are having a heyday with this week's news of the classic Lion King and Aladdin games coming to the Switch, so maybe give them a listen this week. It was an exciting week to be a fan of Nindies, and while we're not really a news podcast, I wanted to make sure you're aware of a couple really exciting announcements that happened this past week. First, at PAX this week, Yacht Club Games, the creators of Shovel Knight, had a little Nintendo Direct of their own, and included a couple of exciting updates. Shovel Knight, King of Cards, the final campaign edition, will be releasing in December. There's no official date yet, but don't just consider this an addition to the game. This title, just like Plague of Shadows that launched alongside the Switch in 2017, is a fully fleshed out game that can stand alone with new levels, bosses, and a completely unique new character to play as. Also, Shovel Knight Showdown, the Smash Bros.-like game featuring all of the characters from the Shovel Knight series, got a bunch of new details and a video on the single-player mode, which seems much deeper than a Smash Bros. Story run, but certainly not as deep as the World of Light mode from Smash Bros. Ultimate. Originally, I thought this would be just a little fun party game to play with friends, but now I'm really looking forward to spending much more time with it, as there is a campaign mode complete with story and new characters. This game also launches in December. Speaking of the launch in December, that is when the final update comes to Shovel Knight Treasure Trove, alongside a physical release for $30. The Shovel Knight Treasure Trove can be found on sale occasionally, and I'll make sure to let you know if that happens again before December. But this title is packed with content, including Shovel Knight, plus all 3 sequel campaigns, 3 custom level modes, more amiibo support, and a ton more to give you plenty of reasons to play this game over and over and over. And the previously mentioned Shovel Knight Showdown will be included with Treasure Trove. Shovel Knight Treasure Trove is probably the number one Nindie that every Switch owner should have on their system. This jam-packed title has top-quality games from an original team of 4 people who set out to make a modern retro Nintendo game over 6 years ago, and we're finally getting to the conclusion of the Shovel Knight saga. Or are we? Because lastly, with Shovel Knight, a brand new game separate from the Treasure Trove itself was announced in cooperation with Nindie developer Nitrome, who has made a lot of Flash and PC browser-based games, but also released the very fun and critically acclaimed Bomb Chicken on Switch just last year. Shovel Knight Dig looks like a Shovel Knight game mixed with SteamWorld Dig, where Shovel Knight must burrow into the depths of the world, chasing after the brand new Drill Knight enemy in an all-new adventure. It ditches some of the retro pixel art for a much more animated, more modern take on the art style, and it looks incredible. We don't have a release date yet, but this one looks to be just one more awesome entry in the Shovel Knight franchise, and I'm really excited to learn more about it in the future. Also in Nindie news, we got the announcement just this morning that the indie darling Castle Crashers is coming to the Switch on September 17th, right around the corner. We'll talk about this game more in a couple weeks, but Castle Crashers is one of the earliest success stories of indie games on a console, originally releasing for the Xbox 360 back in their first Summer of Arcade series in 2007-2008. This 1-to-4 player action beat-em-up features a dozen characters with unique abilities and fighting styles for each. Hilarious story content, RPG mechanics with a bunch of various modes and reasons to replay the campaign, and multiple online minigames in addition to the full campaign. And it is all presented with a gorgeous comic book meets Saturday morning cartoon visual style that will look even better thanks to the remastered version we're getting on the Switch. Do not miss Castle Crashers when it launches in a couple of weeks. With that out of the way, as you know, there's never a dull week in the world of Nindies, but before we get into what's coming up next, let's take a look at what games released on the eShop without any warning over the last week, because why market a video game when you can just release it and hope for the best? Here are the titles that have released since our last episode on August 23rd. Boreal Blade by Frozen Byte is a new team-based melee action game with a top-down perspective that boasts freedom to create the sword-wielding combat that best fits your hack-and-slash style, and it can be yours for $19.99. It includes a demo, so go try it out and see for yourself. For $2.99, publisher Cool Small Games brings us the game where, quote, every press matters. Whatever that means. Deadly Fighter 2 is a side-scrolling kung fu action game that claims to have astonishingly lifelike detail, and well, I'm kind of astonished they would say that because life certainly does not look like this game. Nonetheless, it looks like a simple game, or as the publisher coined, a cool small game. Another demo soaring onto the eShop this week is for Sparklesoft's Pacific Wings, the retro-styled vertical-scrolling shoot-'em-up that puts you in the 1942 Battle for Midway, which, ironically enough, the game looks exactly like Midway's classic 1942. The developer claims the game has different enemies and asks if you find bugs in the game to let them know. Might want to check out the demo before you drop $5 on this one, but I think after one quick look, you'll know if this is a shmup for you. Lastly, we have a new developer with Somber Studio releasing Invisigun Reloaded for $19.99. This top-down stealth action game offers a full single-player campaign as well as a robust multiplayer mode with 12 different characters, each with a unique playstyle and loadout. In this competitive game of hide and seek, those with patience, forethought, trickery, and awareness will be the ones to take home the victory. I don't know about you, but I'm proud of the Nindies this week. Almost everyone got their marketing information to Nintendo in time for publishing. So with that out of the way, we're free to jump into the upcoming new releases. Here's what's coming up in the next week, starting on August 30th. Fuse 4 by Fuse Technologies is a really cool idea that is probably, unfortunately, destined to fail miserably when it launches for $39.99. This title is actually a programming application that is mostly text-driven to help you build games. Some of what they come up with in their video and trailer and pictures looks really simple but very well thought out. Unfortunately, with this being a text-based coding engine, no matter how simple it is, I don't know anyone that will get much done typing code on the Switch's touchscreen. At least you can hook up a USB keyboard though. The program lets you build 2D or 3D games, record and make audio, create or import graphics, and even take advantage of all of the Switch's built-in tech like the gyrometers, accelerometers, and all of the other ometers packed into the Joy-Cons. I'd love to see a Nindie Nation game built in that program someday. I can only assume it would have to be a retro-inspired dungeon crawler with roguelike mechanics and RPG elements.
Also on the 30th, a new game by Ratalaika, Legend of the Skyfish, drops for $7.99 and is a Zelda-inspired action RPG that looks like a ton of fun. Being our friends at Ratalaika, I just got a code for the game, and we'll try to play a little bit of the game for you and give you my thoughts next week. The twist with this game is that the combat and traversal both revolve around a fishing rod as your primary utility or weapon, and it acts like something between a whip and a hook shot, so you're using it to hit enemies as well as to get around the terrain and the world. And it seems to overall be a pretty endearing homage to the classic top-down Zelda adventures. Headspun is a wildly unique take on the FMV genre, or full motion video, by Wales Interactive. It's about a character who wakes up from a 5-week coma and needs to piece his life back together by interacting with all kinds of full motion video from his memory and debating between Ted and Teddy, the two sides of his subconsciousness, to figure out what is real and what is only in his head. So you've got this mix of animated characters and an interface, but everything you're watching is full motion, like people acting out the video itself, and you've got to figure out which, to listen to the devil or the angel on your shoulder, as it were. The soundtrack is a great synthwave score by Soho Loop, and should be on any point-and-click adventurer's radar who has an extra $13 to drop. After the extended weekend in the US, we've got a few more games dropping on September 3rd, starting with Torchlight 2 by Perfect World. This one should absolutely be on your lookout. It is a wonderful Diablo-like action RPG with a bit more hack and slash or real-time action, but is otherwise your standard, start in the town, go into the dungeon, kill the things, get the loot so that you can go into the town and get better stuff to go back into the dungeon and kill bigger things, that kind of loop. And it does so with a very high level of polish. I have played Torchlight 2, I've played Torchlight 1 on a couple of different platforms, and I strongly believe this game is worth every penny of its $20 price tag. Finn and the Ancient Mystery by Silesia Games launches at a 30% discount for only $3.49, or $3.50, and might be my hidden gem of the week. It is a side-scrolling action RPG platformer game with a really unique storybook-like art style. You use a mix of hack and slash and projectile magic to navigate a Metroidvania-type world, so you're solving puzzles, platforming through various unique worlds, grinding levels, and finding new routes through previously explored areas. If you recall in our earlier podcast episodes, I used to buy games while we were recording and learning about those games, and that used to be, a fun, hey, this podcast costs me money every week, as I would buy games on impulse. You can see a couple of those games, actually. Revenge of the Bird King is one of our Let's Play Nindies, and that's one of the games that I picked up on a whim. Anyways, this is the first time I've done that in a few weeks. While preparing for this week's podcast, I thought Finn and the Ancient Mystery looked really cool. It doesn't release until the 3rd, so I had to pre-order it, but I'll do my best to get some time in before recording and report back to you next week. Also on September 3rd is Root Letter Last Answer by P-Cube, and it launches for $30. This visual novel is a murder mystery set in an anime-style world about retracing letters written to you from the friends of your past. Barrier X is a $3 title by Hype Train Digital, who's the publisher that also brought us 12 is Better Than 6, which is the Western-style Hotline Miami-like game, and the recent action platformer Standby, both of which were fairly well received and have justified their respective lower price points. Barrier X is a blazingly fast-paced, endless flying game where you sit behind the spaceship as you navigate it through increasingly faster levels while dodging obstacles and shooting enemies and rocking out to what sounds like a really good electronic music soundtrack. I'm probably not gonna buy this one because it looks a lot like Race the Sun, which is another game just like it that I play a lot of, but based on P-Cube's pedigree and the simple nature of the game, for $3, this one's probably a safe pick. On September 5th, Headliner Novi News, or Navi News, comes to us from a new Nindie developer, Unbound Creations, and is a supposedly award-winning adventure game. The premise seems really cool. You control the news cycle and how it impacts society, your own life, and that of the people around you. I'm pretty sure there's a movie like that, but you're basically like a news anchor, but you're also like kind of controlling the information and the future. Isn't that what that Nicolas Cage movie, The Weatherman, was about? I think so. Something like that. I don't know. Let me know at Nindie Nation. Wait, let me know at Nindie Nation what your favorite Nicolas Cage movie about the future is. What? Anyways, based on what kinds of stories you put out into the world, you get to see a bunch of different scenarios and timelines and stories and even different endings play out. So that would probably make the $14 title give you plenty of replayability. Reminds me a lot of a Quantic Dream game for the PlayStation. Woopo Definitive Edition is another game by a new Nindie developer, whose name I will now butcher. Noist and Persic releases this puzzle platformer at a discount for $11.99 compared to the MSRP of $14.99. And it is a very cute looking take on something between Pikmin or Lemmings, maybe mixed in with a little Patapon. You're exploring a 2D world and looking for a new world for all of your WUM friends, which appear to be overly animated and adorable little blobs who follow the commands of you or you and your co-op partner as you lead them to a new home. Hyperforma by HeroCraft is another title by a new Nindie developer, launching at a 10% discount for $8.99. This extremely different game is like a take on a classic Brick Breaker game, but with an over-stylized neon aesthetic about a virus infiltrating a network. I'm going to call back to the PlayStation again, but if you've ever played anything by Housemarque, they make games like Super Stardust and Resogun, and are essentially other hyper-stylized modern takes on classic arcade games. This one really seems to have a very Housemarque-like soundtrack and approach to the game overall, but as it pertains to the Brick Breaker type game. It's been on PC for some time now, but brings to the Switch a bunch of new features such as a 2-player co-op mode and support for things like the HD rumble, gyroscope controls, etc. This one is definitely going on my wish list. Hyperforma looks like a really fun and cool title. If My Heart Had Wings by Mo Novel is this week's anime visual novel about, quote, boys and girls who loved the sky. The lead character is a wheelchair-bound girl who dreams of soaring through the skies in her glider after an accident that left her paralyzed. And that one will set you back $18. Space Cows is another title by All In Games, who launched Little Racer and Deadlings just last week. Both games I thought looked a lot like worthwhile additions to the eShop, so this one does too. However, I think the developer's own description does a better job than I could at explaining this game. So here it goes. Space Cows is a cheesy twin-stick shooter featuring weaponized toilet plunger and intense zero-gravity combat. Shoot, dash, and wobble in slow motion to save cows and lay vengeance upon an evil corporation. Armed with a toilet plunger, move your naked butt and whack 2,165 mutants. Get it? Mutants. Fight wildly and fart wisely, or the other way around. So there you have it. This game looks really weird, like 1990s late night MTV animation weird, but I think it looks like a pretty solid game if you can get past the purposely ridiculous art style. And it's $11.69, which I'm also sure is probably an intentional price, given what I'm seeing here. This bad boy is also going on the old wish list. Then we get an interesting one. Spice and Wolf VR is the lone published game by Gem Drops and is another anime visual novel about a girl who, of course, is part wolf and apparently is helping you create a VR world. Although I almost think that's just an error in the name and it came from a different platform where it did have VR support. All I know is that this line from the description of the game is quite a gem. Craft Lawrence is a traveling merchant who meets Hollow, a beautiful woman who can transform into a wolf. As they travel together, they face many hardships, such as having to walk in the rain. So, on September 5th, you two can join your wolf girl in a VR but not VR world where apparently you can't walk in the rain. And that can all be yours for $20. 50 Words by Pogi and Lightwood Games is an $8 word search game which includes a demo if you don't know what a word search game is. Pocket Clothier is the 16th time management mobile port by Kairosoft. Don't buy that. Gnome's Garden Lost King by 8 Floor Games is a $10 town builder that has mobile port written all over it. And The Battle of Mahjong by Kusoni Studio is a $10 Mahjong game. With those out of the way, wrapping up the week is the latest game by renowned indie developer Way Forward, who has brought us countless awesome titles, such as the Shantae series dating all the way back to the Game Boy Color, The Mummy Demastered, and the recent Mighty Switch Force collection, which I've been playing and working on a Let's Play Nindies of. Their new title, River City Girls, launches for a steep $30, but Way Forward has a very solid history of providing well over a year of additional and worthwhile content into their games after release. As the title suggests, this is indeed a new entry in the classic River City series, which dates all the way back to the original Nintendo. It is a classic beat-em-up like the Konami arcade games of legend, TMNT, Simpsons, X-Men, etc., with single-player or two-player co-op. You traverse through 6 large open worlds, beating up everyone while listening to chiptunes by some very well-known composers like Christina V and Nate Wants to Battle. You work your way through the worlds, collecting weapons, shopping for power-ups, and upgrading your characters, all on your way to rescue your boyfriends who have both been kidnapped and are being held for ransom. I'll probably wait for a sale on this game just because getting new Switch games every week, I can't always buy the $30 titles. I hope you can understand. But 99 Vitas is currently my favorite beat 'em up on the Switch, and I have a feeling that River City Girls might just give that game a run for its money, so don't miss that one. And then, while it is for next week's episode, there is one big title that I will mention for September 6th, just in case we don't talk before then. That is Creature in the Well, the crazy dungeon crawler / sadistic pinball ninja game. This is why I love talking about indie games all the time. This game looks awesome. Well, with a nicely rounded mix of games launching this week, I think it's great to see some well-reviewed titles by new developers. If games like Whoopo, Space Cows, or Headliner Novi News seem up your alley, please go pick them up while they're still within their new release price window and support some newcomers to the nation of Nindie. If you're not in the mood to check out a brand new Nindie, however, there are currently 260 games on sale, with 85 of those sales being new for this week. So let's do what we do best and help you find the Nindies worth the sweat off your brow. Because isn't that what a man is entitled to? Kicking off the deals for this week, I want to remind you that SteamWorld Dig, SteamWorld Dig 2, and SteamWorld Heist are still on sale through September 5th, all for 70% off. Do not miss those titles, please. Also, we have Axiom Verge, the side-scrolling Metroidvania game, for 30% off at $13.99. Die for Valhalla is a super bloody Viking beat-em-up that is currently half off for $5.99. The Stranger Things 3 game is currently also half off for $9.99. If you've already finished the season and want a little bit more Stranger Things in your life, check that one out. It's actually a RPG retro beat 'em up game. I've been saying beat 'em up a lot this week, haven't I? I guess that's the trend right now. Something that's not exactly an indie game, but was an indie game funded by Ubisoft, Child of Light Ultimate Edition, which includes like 3 extra very small minor DLCs, is currently 60% off for $7.99. And it is a wonderful throwback JRPG where the whole game is told in rhyme scheme. I love this game. I have such a sweet spot in my heart for Child of Light. It's one of those games that I just like to come back to every couple of years, so I might see myself going back to it on the Switch. Binding of Isaac's Afterbirth Plus, which is their all-in-one Game of the Year, etc. edition, is also 50% off for $9.99. Creature in the Well, the aforementioned sadistic dungeon crawling pinball game, is 10% off if you pre-order it, so you can lock it in for $13.49. Snake Pass, one of the first indie darlings on the Switch, is 60% off for $7.99. Oceanhorn, Monster of the Uncharted Seas, is a Zelda ripoff with gorgeous graphics and really fun gameplay that goes a little bit deeper than something like Legend of Zelda would in terms of mechanics, and it's 50% off for $7.49. Cave Story, one of the first indie successes dating all the way back to 2004 as a Flash game, is 50% off for $14.99. Smoke and Sacrifice is 60% off for $7.99, and this is an open world narrative action RPG in a very grotesque like underworld type thing. Kid Trip is 50% off for $1.99. It's a really fun side-scrolling, like an endless runner obstacle kind of game. We had a lot of fun with that one. Venture Kid, a Mega Man-like title, is 50% off as well for $5 even, and this one has a demo, so you can check it out beforehand. And then, you know what? I have never known how to pronounce this. VVVVVV, or is it V? Anyways, this very classic indie game is also 50% off for $4.99 and is one of the highest rated all-time independent games alongside Cave Story. I've actually not played but I've heard people rave about it forever. So if you do pick it up for $5, let me know. Xenon Valkyrie Plus is only 33% off for $6.69, but it's a game that I played and had a lot of fun with. It's really hard to explain. It's kind of like a Metroid game, but it's a little bit of a roguelike, and you're gonna have to watch the trailer. I'll put one up if you're watching the video right now. I really had a lot of fun with this game. It's a little too hard, I think, but for less than $7, I would recommend it. It's a really fun time. Tumblestone is a wonderful puzzle game and a great option to keep on your Switch if you wanna do the whole pass the Joy-Con and play a game off tabletop mode. It's currently 70% off for $4.49. Shadow of Loot Box, a wonderfully awful, so bad it's good type of game by Ratalaika, is 40% off for $4.79. And I will say this game takes about, 3 hours to beat. And if you're willing to play a game mostly just for the gags and the goofs, play it. It's really funny. It's a really hilarious commentary on video games. And while it's not a very good game, that's not really the point. I had a lot of fun with it, but you have to know what you're getting yourself into. And finally, your super cheap game of the week is Hyper Sentinel, the simple but addictive side-scrolling arcade shooter, which is currently 93% off for only 90 cents. For 90 cents, what can't I recommend, right? And that's it for this week's sales and new releases. As far as picks of the week go, new releases, I'm gonna have to say I'm really excited about Thin, which I just picked up, but I will recommend Torchlight to just about anybody, so that's gotta get the award for the week. In terms of the games on sale, there's of course the SteamWorld series. If you haven't played Child of Light, I really recommend that, especially if you're not too familiar with role-playing games. This would be a really good first one to jump into. Other than that, Die for Valhalla. It's a really fun It's grotesque, but it's a very rewarding game. The action your characters take just feels really good to execute. But let me know what you think. You can reach us at Nindie Nation on Twitter, or you can talk directly to me at Nindie Jeff. For more Nindie Nation, you can look us up on YouTube and subscribe to the Nindie Nation YouTube channel, where we have weekly Let's Play Nindies videos, a video component to every weekly podcast, and coming soon, a brand new video series that I'm still working on and very excited to share with you. All of Nindie Nation is brought to you by the Nintendo Village. As I mentioned earlier, the NintendoVillage.com is a site of content creators who love Nintendo. You can check out their weekly shows like P-Myth Gaming or Nintendo Nostalgia, or you can read their feature articles, reviews, previews, all that kind of stuff. And please, find them on Twitter and engage in the conversation as well at Village Nintendo. And until next week, thank you so much for your time. I sincerely appreciate every single one of you who listens, who watches us on YouTube, or who chats with us on Twitter. It really means a lot, and I love your feedback. So keep it coming, good, bad, indifferent, or if there's some content that you want to see, I would love to pick up a game and say, so-and-so recommended it, and here it is, and here's some thoughts, or here's a video, or whatever the case is. But until next week, you know what games are on sale, you know what new games are coming out, you've got everything you need to keep those Joy-Cons synced.